Some breaking news into the live desk. We are just learning about an arrest in the death of a Prescott Valley baby. The child's mom charged with second-degree murder. Angela Clark behind bars tonight. Police say she left her 3-month-old daughter alone in the bathtub for almost a half an hour. Girl was put on life support. She later died at the hospital.
Joining us now via Skype from San Francisco is Scott Bennett. He's a former U.S. Army psychological warfare officer. Many thanks for joining us here on Press TV, Mr. Bennett. Now, as we've just mentioned, this policy of not adopting the no first use nuclear policy is part of the U.S.'s deterrent policy, saying that it insists on its right to launch a preemptive nuclear strike. Does that keep America safe?
Well, it's very disturbing. It's one of the most disturbing things I've heard in all of my life, really, in all of the military days that I've had too. This is a representation of the American military at the Pentagon, the generals and the admirals, going completely out of control and manipulating the civilian-appointed Secretary of Defense, Ashton Carter, and persuading him through nonsense bureaucratic papers and studies that are put out by Booz Allen Hamilton and the Rand Corporation and numerous defense contractors justifying the necessity of a first strike capability, and Ashton Carter siding with those morons in bureaucratic uniforms to assume a posture where now they are most likely going to be engaging in some sort of a first strike nuclear capability, most likely against Iran. That's what they're saying in code. And it's disturbing that it's even being talked about, but it's being put on the table. Now, it doesn't keep America safe. In fact, it threatens every American. It threatens Europe. It threatens the world. What it shows also is that the Obama administration, President Obama, is completely out of touch. John Kerry, the State Department Secretary, is out of touch. And Ashton Carter and the Defense Pentagon and the military bureaucrats at U.S. Central Command, which are completely off the chain, are carving out future job employment operations in endless war, and they're carving out potential wars in Syria and Iran. What Obama needs to do is immediately fire Ashton Carter, immediately fire the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the Secretary of the Army, the Secretary of the Navy. The military brass generals need to be immediately replaced because they obviously are posturing the military-industrial complex in the Pentagon for some action post the election. And we could be entering a time between October and January where something very serious could happen, triggered by the military, in order to create a war situation for the next year. We've seen them do that already.
Let me just jump in there. When you say that by maintaining a first strike option when it comes to America's nukes, it is creating more of a risk of a war or nuclear catastrophe. Could you just elaborate more on that? Because the argument being presented is that if the U.S. maintains first strike capability, it then dissuades its enemies from using nuclear weapons against the U.S.
The American military brass, the leadership, get very bloodlusty drunk in war, in combat operations, in battle, and if they think they are going to be allowed and not prosecuted and fired and hung for taking first strike capability, they most likely will, because they live for war. They love war, most likely because the generals and the admirals aren't the ones in the trenches. They're not the ones dying. They're simply moving dollars on a game board around for defense contractors. And it's a very sick society that lives like that. But it's dangerous because it does cause Russia and Iran and China instant defensive posture to know that the Americans have already launched missiles and attacks upon Syrian troops and Russian troops. And they've already blown up Russian Ministry of Defense broadcasting units with regular kinetic weapons. What's to stop them from anteing that up even further and taking some sort of a pro-Israeli first strike against Iran or other areas, justifying it is to stop Russian aggression? That's the danger, is it will excite the American military leadership to take that sort of an action. And it's very disturbing because the United States has theoretically under the laws of democracy, the United States people have control over their military to defend the United States in war. The military does not have a free pass and a card to go anywhere it wants in the world and engage in strike capabilities. That's
Right.
what we see right now, and that's what caused Russia to launch countermeasure missiles and destroy the 30 Israeli, U.S., Qatar, and Saudi Arabian soldiers or intelligence officials who were coordinating the U.S. strike against the Syrian troops. Make no mistake, it's also been identified that John McCain was the senator in charge of that strike. He was behind the Pentagon attack on those Syrian troops. And it just shows the fecklessness of Obama when John McCain, the senior chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee, has a relationship with the senior military officials at U.S. Central Command and encourages them to engage in this sort of a strike
All right,
because
I'm
of
going to have to
his
stop you
blood
there.
hatred for
Unfortunately, we've
Russia.
run out of time. That's Scott Bennett, former U.S. Army Psychological Warfare Officer, joining us via Skype from San Francisco. Mr. Bennett, it's always great to have you with us here on Press TV.
Author and journalist Mr. Stephen Lenman joins us now from Chicago. Mr. Lenman, it's great to have you with us here on Press TV's Top 5 once again. I believe it was immediately after the attack on Deir al-Zawr, we spoke about the situation, and correct me if I'm wrong, you stated that the facts on the ground, they're all indicating that it was, the scenario looked like that it was the United States coming to the aid of Daesh and giving them, basically reinforcing them with the aerial assaults. And now the Parliament Speaker of Syria stated that there's an audio file that pretty much states to verify that claim, that it was the United States helping and aiding Daesh in that attack in Deir al-Zawr. Talk to us about this.
Oh, indeed. I've explained this before many times. America is directly involved in aiding Daesh, al-Nusra, and all other anti-government forces, arming, funding, training, directing them, teaching them atrocities, use of chemical weapons, use of banned weapons. It goes on and on. And of course, America tries to change the subject every time its nefarious activities are exposed. I'm not surprised that there's an audio file showing that U.S. forces conspired with ISIS to launch the attack on Deir al-Zawr and killing 82 Syrian soldiers, injuring maybe 100 others. Just a devastating high crime of war. And America tries to just slough it off by calling it a mistake. It was no mistake. It was a deliberate attack. I mean, American intelligence and the ability to know exactly the coordinates of a target and who they want to hit, they can do it very easily. Russia does it all the time. America can do it all the time. The Syrian forces were attacked because America wanted to disrupt the process, wanted to really subvert any chance of peace in Syria. America's aim is one thing. It's regime change. It's turning Syria into a U.S. vassal state, and it intends to continue war until its objective is achieved. And the only way to defeat them is by Syrian forces, with Russian help, defeating these terrorist forces, smashing them, all anti-government forces, not just ISIS and al-Nusra, but all of them. They're all terrorists, and I stress this time and again.
Mr. Lenman, if this audio file is authentic and it is disclosed, what happens next? How much of the composition of what's taking place on the ground can change? Will the United States just deny it? Will it have to back up on its stance? What do you think will happen?
Oh, America won't change its tactics at all, and it has to be emphasized that after the U.S. attack, coordinating it with ISIS, the ISIS forces were told to position themselves to prepare to attack and occupy the territory that America was bombing. So I mean, this was a setup by America. Will it change America's policy? No. See what happened Sunday during the Emergency Security Council meeting that America, Britain, and France called. It was just an excuse to demagogue the conflict, bash Russia, bash Syria, blame them for U.S. crimes and the crimes of America's allies. And this is the way America responds to incidents like the Azura, and it'll keep doing it. I wish diplomacy would work, but I don't see any possibility of Russia striking a deal with America and having it stick. And I know the history of America and the deals that it strikes and the breaching them virtually every single time from the Republic's inception. Look what it's done with the Iran nuclear deal, breaching the terms. And I'm worried that if Hillary succeeds Obama, that the deal may be abolished altogether. All those years down the drain because America wants regime change in all independent countries, all of them worldwide.
Author and journalist Stephen Lenman joining us from Chicago. Thank you for your comments.
August 2016 broke records.